right, welcome to Punk Love and Compassion. This week, I have the pleasure of speaking with Seneca. Seneca is out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Known him for a while, late 90s. Seneca is a musician. He's done zines, as well as a lot of other cool things. We'll get into all of that later. A couple things before we get started. I do another podcast with my son. He's 11, and we talk about cryptids and aliens and fae and paranormal stuff. It's called Hidden Creatures. So if y'all want to check that out, or if you're into that kind of stuff, he would get a kick if you check that out. And also the parent organization that helps me get all this stuff out to you is called the Alabama Take. They do a bunch of podcasts on like pop culture and sports and stuff like that. And they would also appreciate it if you're into any kind of that stuff to take a look at their stuff. And lastly, I'm getting better. This is still my first season, but a couple things that you will probably hear in the background is I have some chickens in the backyard. They will peck at the door. You'll probably hear that. You'll probably hear my dogs. And I have a wife and child. And so you may hear them as well. Yeah. So with that, we will get started. So Seneca, do you want to introduce yourself any further than what my very, very brief and vague introduction of you was?
My name's Seneca. I'm out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. I grew up in the punk rock scene here since I was a teen. Just found my way into it with some local folks. And then throughout that, I've been in Wyoming pretty much most of the time, sometimes Colorado, just in and out of the different musical scenes. So throughout that journey, I've met a ton of people within punk rock and punk rock adjacent movements and just going with the flow along this journey. And here we are in the present.
Awesome. Cool. So with that actually is a great segue into my first question, which is, do you remember what the first punk song you ever heard was? And you can define, like, my definition of punk is a very large umbrella. So you can define that however you would like.
Yeah, my definition of however I would like will be blurry. I'll say my mainstream introductions or MTV back in the day, and probably 120 minutes, I would be introduced to random things in the evening. But to identify the first one, I don't know. But I will say this, the first time I was grabbed, and this is so strange, it was around the 90s explosion and Nirvana and Green Day, that era. But I was in junior high and I was dating a girl, and she used to have pen pals. Back then, everybody had pen pals, and she would have so many pen pals, and that was her thing. And she was conversing with someone out of Chicago region, I remember, and she had a mixtape. And it was punk stuff, and it was all kinds of punk stuff. Her pen pal at the time, I don't even know how I remember this, but he worked in an ER and was always stressed and shared punk stuff that got him through the shift and stuff like that. And one of the tapes I remember that struck out to me, there was a early Hole song with Courtney Love from, what was the album before? Pretty on the Inside.
Okay.
And I don't remember the specific song, but I remember it sounding so abrasive and different. And this is before Live Through This came out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? And it blew my mind because I'm in junior high. And at that time, I was still in the mainstream rock music. So my references were like Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and hair metal stuff that I didn't fully... It was there, but then I heard something that resonated for the first, like truly resonated.
Yeah.
And that was that. And it was Courtney Love, you know. And so a lot of people in modern day, they're not fans of Courtney Love or Hole. And I'm like, shaped my whole existence.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. You know, I think everybody has their own opinions, and they are what they are. And all of our heroes have some skeletons with them, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away from the impact that they had on our lives.
Absolutely.
Forget, like, I love the Smiths. I love Morrissey's music.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't love Morrissey.
Exactly.
You know, his current belief system doesn't negate the impact his musical library has had on my life.
Absolutely. You know, I think you could extract this simple and one of the largest songs, this specifically, I am human, I need to be loved, when it comes to compassion. That says it all.
Right. You know, I think people forget that, oh, this person did this. Yeah, they did. but that
Yeah.
doesn't negate all of this. But I also like the first song that has a true impact on you is I think is special. So a couple years ago, I was reading a book by, I think it's named Bob Boylan. He's the guy who started like Tiny Desk with NPR. The title of the book was like, "This Song Changed My Life," or "Your Song Changed My Life."
Oh, okay.
And he interviewed a bunch of different people about like the one song, and a wide spectrum from people. So everybody from like Ian MacKaye to like David Byrne, right? Like a huge spectrum of people. And it got me thinking like, oh, okay, what is the first song that I remember not just listening to, but that made me realize music was more than just music,
Yeah.
right? And for me, it was, and I've talked about this before, but for me, it was the Anthrax Public Enemy team up of Bring the Noise.
Bring the Noise.
God, the first time I heard that song, it was like, what is this? And I remember listening to music before that, right? I'd listened to Anthrax before that. I'd listened to Public Enemy before that. I'd listened to all the 80s new wave stuff. But that song was like, holy Moses. Like, okay, there's something more to this, and I need to figure out how to find more of this.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to find music that makes me feel.
That's exactly it. It reminds me of food. I grew up in a very bland food world, and the first time I had Indian food or something, or Thai food, I'm like, oh, this exists outside of my world? I now go this direction.
Yeah, there's more than just salt and black pepper to flavor things with.
Exactly.
Yeah. When we were younger, there's more than just like daytime MTV. There's Headbangers Ball, there's Alternative Nation, there's 120 Minutes, there's like, there is this other stuff. It's just, you just have to seek it out.
Exactly. I think it's so funny how chance will find us in that aspect. You're like, oh, Bring the Noise. This has a wild groove that I've never heard before, and an energy level that is higher than almost anything that you can think of during that era. Yeah, that's a really good example. I think that's what it is, that spark.
Yeah. Before that, Run DMC did the thing with Aerosmith, Walk This Way. I remember hearing it. I remember watching the video and liking it, and I liked it. But there was just something different with that Anthrax Public Enemy mix up. As I'm sure with you, it was probably just like you'd heard all this music before, but like just something, whether it was that day, whether it was going on in your life, whether it was, who remembers what that factor was, but like that song at that time just hits differently.
Yeah, it could have. I'm trying to think of the specifics. It could have been, I think they had like a cover, or like a covers loosely phrased of the Joni Mitchell song on that, and Clouds or something. And it's just so noisy and chaotic.
Yeah.
And, I was an angry, angsty teen, and nothing ever spoke to the noise.
Yeah.
My body was yearning to connect with. And that shaped me.
No, definitely. And I think the other thing you touched on that was real important at that time, more than just us, but in general growing up, was the mixtapes.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the first time I heard one of my friends talking about mixtapes. I was like, what's a mixtape? I don't know what a mixtape is. So I'm asking them, and they were a couple years older than I was. And they're like, oh, like you just take a bunch of different songs, you put them on a tape, and you give it to somebody. So in my head, like the way I heard it was, you take snippets of songs, and you mix those snippets together on this tape.
Mashups.
Right. So it's just this chaos of noise. And so I did when I gave it to her, and she's like, what is this? I was like, I made you a mixtape. And she's like, what the hell am I listening to? Like, it's 10 seconds of this song and 2 seconds of this song. I was like, yeah, isn't that what a mixtape is? She's like, no.
You failed the assignment.
You have like A for effort, but you did not understand. So she's like, I will make you a mixtape so you can understand. I was like, oh, please. Let me understand.
Clearly, I need that.
Yeah. And just introduce me to a wide range of music. So, it was like, on that tape was Suicidal Tendencies and Danzig and like just a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. But it was, it's complete songs. Got it. Now I understand.
Yeah.
Once I understood, making those mixtapes was like me making mixtapes and giving them to people became a very large part of my life for a while.
That era was classic for that. It's interesting. We have technology. We all know now, I guess, a playlist and all that stuff. But there's just something about choosing and spending time with it that became something that I built this from almost my core, and I'm giving this to you. And it's such a message that is tied to the medium that you can't really replicate without the medium, I don't think.
And it's also, it's okay. I always use 90-minute tapes. So it's like I have 45 minutes and I need to take up as much of this 45 minutes as possible per side. I always hated leaving like a big, silence, because then like you'd have to flip it over and rewind it to the beginning or tapes. But it was also part of, I'm going to take the time and curate this playlist specifically for you of songs and music I don't think you've heard, but I think you'll really be into. There was an
Intentionality.
Yes, about it. Yeah, that you don't get with the playlists on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to music.
Yeah.
So with that, at what point in time do you remember realizing like, okay, cool. So there's this genre of music that people are making. I'm now tuned into it. So from that to realizing that there was a scene and then becoming involved in the greater scene.
Yeah, there's two factors if I think about that, how I coalesced. One is the music, the face value music in which I was cultured through the social construct of the grunge movement. And from there, I fell in love with Nirvana. They were my first mainstream band that I fell in love to without influence of someone I knew. Clearly, there is external influence. There's a whole zeitgeist that influenced it, but I latched on to it. But with the scene itself, I remember in Cheyenne, this is so funny because we're a metal town. We've always been a metal town. And I didn't mind. Like, I liked metal, at least I thought I did. I was into the mainstream stuff. I listened to some like Death and stuff like that here and there, but not a lot. Metallica and Megadeth. Megadeth I liked more than Metallica at the time. And then, but there is a local mosh, and they called it a mosh. Are you going to the mosh next month? And this was just some local metal bands playing and a bunch of long-haired dudes going around moshing to the band. And
Nice.
I'm like, let's go to the mosh. And it wasn't going to the local show. It wasn't going to that. And like the idea of like music was still disconnected from me as far as musicians were people who toured around. They were Guns N' Roses, right? They were Nirvana. So I was going to the mosh. I wasn't going to go see local bands or anything like that. But I showed up to the mosh, did the mosh, and coincidentally, there were some local metal bands playing. And at the time, I was like, there are people playing music like here in this tiny little 200 capacity room, and it was a pretty like they packed the house, and I was like really impressed. It was this local metal band called Forgotten Realm, and classic like metal long hair riffs about D&D and the underworld and whatnot. And I was like, this is so cool. I didn't resonate with the music, but the fact that they were just playing the kids, I was like, how is this possible? And then I met some people in high school. I had, I think, a Sex Pistols shirt or something. They were like, oh, you're into this? No one else is into this. Let's be friends and destroy the world together.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sign me up. And so from there, I had some smaller shows, scene shows, where you'd go see a punk rock band in Fort Collins and Denver. And then eventually that wall, that idealized version of musician where they're on the giant grand stage, you realize that there are people just playing this. And, in punk rock, they say, you could do this too. And I'm like, I can't. No one in my family plays music. And I've had ear surgeries. I had surgeries on my fingers. So I'm like, I can't do it. And they're like, you can do it. So I'm like, all right, fuck yeah. I'm going to grab a guitar and I'm going to try to do it. And that was really pivotal to me. But it started at the local mosh.
That's awesome.
Just saying it is so hilarious to me.
Yeah, it is a little funny. But also, like we all have introductions, right? Not everybody can have the luck of being born into a big town or a big city that has a vibrant scene.
Yeah.
I lucked being born and getting into music in the DC area, right?
Mhm.
It was just easier access versus Wyoming, where it's
Sparse.
sparse, right? The entire population of Wyoming lived within a mile of my apartment in Northern Virginia.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but also like knowing Cheyenne, it makes perfect sense that like it had this metal scene because
yeah.
why wouldn't it? It just fits with Cheyenne.
It's a great metal town to this day.
Yeah.
Hats off. I'm friends with all the people who play that stuff, and it's amazing. I always envy the metal scene here because Cheyenne scenes ebb and flow and they boom and bust just like the mining industry here. But the metal always had a pulse that kept pumping underneath it all. They always just got down, got to work, and when they were ready, it revived and it did really well.
Yeah. And also like metal just has that like working class roots too,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
Cheyenne is very much a working class town from the mining industry, from the ranching industry, from the railway.
The oil around
oil,
here,
yeah.
a lot of oil workers, and it's definitely a working class town.
Definitely leads its way to people listening to Skid Row and Motley Crue and Jack
Exactly.
And then what comes from that? So moving from metal to more punk, you said you met a couple other kids in high school, but would you mind going more into that journey and what that transition?
So I started watching 120 Minutes and really paying attention to Nirvana, and I would read articles from Kurt Cobain, and that he was like, I grew up on Black Flag or Sex Pistols and stuff like that, Pixies. And I'm like, what's that stuff? And so there was a local music place in town. I would go and I'd be like, what's the deal with Pixies? What's a Pixie? I know what a Pixie stick is because I love sugar because I'm in junior high. I need to know more, from there.
Was that Ernie November?
No, it was before Ernie November. It was a local place called Books and Music.
Okay.
It was owned by a Greek immigrant, and he was I think he was a jazz guy, and he had tons of like cool music, and he also had these amazing bootlegs. And this is the time where you'd get bootleg CD. There would be like a special Italian Nirvana bootleg live CD, and all these amazing things. And he would introduce me to stuff, and I would go, I'd buy a t-shirt, and that's how I'm in high school one day. There's this, I had a crush on this foreign exchange student, right? I was just like head over heels, like puppy dog, like into her. And she was always hanging out with this crew, and there's this dude. I'm like, who's that guy? I hate that guy. And then one day, that dude had a Pennywise shirt or something. I'm like, wait a minute. He knows who Pennywise is? What's going on? And then one day I'm wearing my Sex Pistols shirt and we see each other at the music store in the Mall of Cheyenne. And he goes, Sex Pistols, punk rock. I'm like, yeah, I listen to the punk rock. And he's like, you've got a blah, blah, blah shirt. And next thing we hit it off and we're friends. I forget all about whoever that girl is.
Yeah.
And then from there, we just kind of coalesced, started going to shows together. You want to go to a punk rock show? In my mind, that's so beyond me. I never even considered that like I could go to Denver to a punk rock show. That like blew my mind. Our first big show was like Pennywise. And it was like Pennywise, I think 2 months after Kurt Cobain killed himself, they did a Nirvana cover. They sold out the Ogden Theater. It was crazy. I've never seen Stage Divers. And this is my first probably sense of like punk rock community.
Okay.
He's saying all the typical stuff you would expect. We're going to work together. We're going to get through this. Someone died who introduced punk rock to a lot of people. I'm like, that's me. You're talking about me. And he's like, we go stand up for people. There's a lot of moshing and stage diving. If someone falls, you pick them back up. When I was at the mosh, it was just like, elbows run into each other. Here, this guy's saying, if someone falls, this is about love. Pick each other up. We work together and we fight together. And that was so pivotal for me that it changed my mindset.
Yeah. For me, I was going to metal concerts before I started going to punk shows, but it was probably the second or third concert I went to was Metallica on the Black Album tour. I don't know however old I was when that came out. some of the neighbor kids like, oh, you're going there? It's like, yeah, it's like they're going to be moshing. I was like, I don't know what moshing is.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, you have to get in the pit. And I was like, what's the pit?
Yeah. Tell me
And so
about this.
the pit that's typically where the orchestra is, this orchestra pit. So again, in my head, like very literal, I'm like, okay, so there's this big hole in the floor where you go and then you mosh. And they're like, we're going to have to teach you how to mosh before. And at that time, like they were calling it like slam dance. We're going to have to teach you how to slam dance, right? I was like, okay. So we're like in my driveway and it was all just teaching how to slam dance. And yeah, so I went to Metallica and I realized it wasn't a big hole in the floor and slam dance. And then through punk, I was like, oh, it is more than, like you said, more than just like elbows and knuckles. And it's more of this community. And that, I think that community piece for me is what really sort of made me transition away from more of the metal stuff into, you know, and I still listen to metal after, like, I was like, okay, this is the community I belong to. But I definitely didn't really go to any more metal shows after that or concerts. It was more just that community aspect. Like, you know, we are all in this together and everybody was talking about unity and singing about unity and had unity patches on their, you know, whatever they had patches on. But unity was this big thing.
Yeah, it's amazing, the idea of also what I think snagged me, because I didn't have community. I didn't grow up in church. I grew up in total fractured trauma childhood. So the sense of community I was yearning for, I didn't know I was yearning for it, but I was probably as close to certifiable antisocial when punk rock found me. I remember probably in that same era, I took a baseball bat and had it underneath my trench coat because I got bullied. And I'm a small dude. I've always been a small dude, especially in high school. I'm just 5'6", $120 weight, you know. So, but there's this big dude bullying me. And my mom always said, someone bullies you, you beat the shit out of him. And so I'm like, I can't fight him, so I'm going to do this. And it's only by chance that didn't happen, which who knows what my life would have been had I assaulted someone in high school. You know what I mean? But that's where I was antisocially. I was full of rage and anger. And most in youth, especially males, we have that, you know, all these testosterone, the chemicals rising, and it's like, what do I do with this ball of energy? And it's like this gorgeous amount of energy, and you have external factors prodding it and it can explode, but you can take this energy and channel it somewhere positive. And luckily it was only by chance that coincidentally the punk rock stuff was such a strong magnet that my energy started going toward it. And then I realized I'm not a tough dude, never have been, never will. But I do get angry like everyone else. But learning that, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to fight for this, we're going to care about this, and we're going to try to do this. That was really powerful for me. I was really focused on that positive community part. Meanwhile, a lot of people, and you know, I think there's two factions. You get focused on the positive community building part, and that was my magnet. But some people got really compelled and enamored by the chaos and destruction part. I love that too, and there's no denying it. But luckily for me, that need and that thirst and hunger for community was far more important than anything else. So I was always seeking that out. And when it finally found me, I knew that was it for me.
I think similarly, yeah, like I was an angry, pissed off kid.
Yeah.
Like at 15, pretty much on my 15th birthday, like I was homeless. And it wasn't like my family was homeless. It was like my mom was just like, leave. I don't want you here. And I was like, cool. What do I do now? You know? And so, and it was weird. There were a couple different families I lived with, one more than the others. Every now and then I would go back to my mom's apartment and like spend a couple days there. But it was also like, sometimes I was, you know, like sleeping on a park bench in the street, like whatever. And that community within the punk scene, it was like, cool. We don't care if you've been wearing the same clothes 2 days in a row, whatever. You're part of us. You're a decent human being. And we all have issues versus going to school and then dealing with the nonsense there of why haven't you changed your clothes in a week? I don't have anything to change into, but you know, you can't You can't say
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right? The teacher's, why haven't you done your homework? It's hard to do homework when you're like on a park bench.
Yeah.
It's hard to do homework when you don't have a home to go to. But again, you can't really, maybe
Yeah.
I should have, but couldn't really tell my teachers that. I didn't have a good enough relationship with any of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, just the punk scene, the punk community was like, come as you are. We don't care.
Yeah, that's the thing, like, when the doors all are welcome,
Mhm.
that I was an outcast with long metal hair,
Mhm.
I've got brown skin, and that I never really thought about that in the punk rock community. I was just like, "I'm here. Like, you guys are treating me cool and decent and, like, talking to me. You see me, visibility?
Yeah.
I've never had visibility. This is a first for me."
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And again, like you hit on earlier, that punk umbrella is very, very large. And a portion of that umbrella is definitely that like self-destructive. And for me, like that part just never was attractive to me. And, because I could have very easily been there and then not been here.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And I was doing another interview last weekend and we sort of got into this similarly. But, I became straight edge very early on in my punk rock career. I decided to be straight edge, but being straight edge for me wasn't necessarily about like this drug-free, healthy lifestyle. It was more along the lines of all of these people expect me to fail. So the
Mhm.
biggest fuck you I can give these people is to succeed. And I know I can't succeed if I go down this punk rock path. If I go down this punk rock path, I prove all these people correct.
Yeah.
And so I need to go down this path to prove them wrong.
Yeah, I grew up around drug addicts and alcoholics. At that time, when pivotal 16, probably 22, I was declared as straight edge. Before I knew what straight edge was, I was against the idea of being like you. And so, like, I will never be like you. Unfortunately, the story does not end like a straight path to straight edge for me. I say unfortunate. It's actually quite fortunate because I learned so much
Yeah.
in my own individuality and growth. But I won't ever be like you, which was so empowering for me at the time. It was great to know that there were other people who rejected growing up in that way. And how cool is that to find someone who's, yeah, we're all around this fucking trauma and this fucking generational alcoholism, but you know what? We're going to reject it. And I'm like, oh, you could just opt out and you can just say no? What? Oh, that's crazy. All right, sign me up.
Yeah, well, and for me, like most of my friends weren't straight edge. So I wasn't hanging
Yeah.
out with like a bunch of straight edge people. I was hanging out
Wow.
with people who were more on that like sort of
Yeah.
self-destructive. But there was a mutual respect because when I made the decision for myself and not for
Yeah.
everybody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the people I was hanging out with, it was like, cool, like y'all do what you do. I'm going to do what I do. And we can still respect each other and hang out and not try to force this opinion on each other and still respect each other for it. But with that too, I know people, and one of my very good friends was hanging out with at the time was not edge. He later became edge. I have friends who were edge and are no longer edge. Pardon me. The journey is different for all of us, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think one of the other things I learned from punk with this is that not to judge people for their journeys.
Yeah.
Today, I'm making the best decision for myself. And the decision I make today, my entire life could be different 5 years from now. And I can make a different decision, but still have it be healthy and productive to my life 5 years from now.
That's good. I had to learn to not be forceful by falling in my face over and over again. So I needed a more greater humility to find that.
Yeah. And I think we've all had that journey as well. Each one of us has our own things we get caught up on. Right. So even though like I was edge, most of my friends weren't, like they were still, that didn't make me free from judgment. It didn't make me free from getting in stupid arguments and stupid fights because my brain was what it was at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely.
All that life experience, all these hormones raging inside you, external noise of the political climate, energy, and
also just the anger, right? Like, how do I get all these crazy and intense feelings I have inside of me that I don't know how to deal with? Like, how do I get it out?
Yeah.
You know,
And for me, I was always projecting. So my greatest fears were to be OD'd or
Mhm.
something like that at the time.
Mhm.
And so I would be like, no, you can't do that. And I also had attachment disorders,
Yeah.
everything else. I was afraid of losing people.
Mhm.
So my friends would smoke a joint. What I heard in my soul was, yeah, I'm going to OD tomorrow. And they were like, "I don't get what your big deal is." I'm like, "You're gonna die. I'll be
Yeah.
alone,
Yeah.
and then one day I'll do the same thing." So much fear and anger.
Well, and I think again, you said trauma, right? It's like all of us in the greater scene have this trauma, right? And I think it's safe to say that trauma is what made punk attractive to most of us.
Absolutely.
And it's figuring out how to deal with that trauma,
Yeah. It's a soundtrack to a trauma bond.
And it's weird because thinking about it, I was listening to a whole, wide variety of bands. So on the one hand, I was listening to 7 Seconds and Gorilla Biscuits and like Born Against and Los Crudos. These people that had this sort of important political, social, positive-esque message of, hey, go out and change the world, be
Yeah.
better, make the world better, make yourself better, fight this tyranny. It's like, cool. And I'm all in. And then I was also listening to Hatebreed and Blood for Blood and
Oh, yeah.
Despair and bands like they're like fuck the world and fuck you. I had these very oppositional voices all penetrating my head, and I was loving all of it.
Oh, yeah.
And some days it was like, cool, we're rocking out to Blood for Blood, and this is my outlook on the world for today. And then other days it's cool. Here's Boy Sets Fire. So I'm going to listen to them and have this very empathetic, compassionate world outlook. Yeah. And juggling the two was crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, especially looking back on it like now, it's wow, like opposite ends of the spectrum there.
I was always enamored by the idea of throwing the Molotov cocktail, but I was more of the guy writing about it in my journal. I love listening to the angst movement type, let's burn it all down. But I was the guy who resonated, with the old classic Jawbreaker, like I'm writing down this internal introspection.
Yeah.
This is my soundtrack because I've got to work through some stuff.
I think movements need the spectrum as well. They need those sort of mindless frontline people that are willing to do this stupid stuff, like throw the Molotov cocktail or go out and get in fights and be more physical, as well as the documentarians.
Yeah, not to sound super corporate entity, but if you think about Myers-Briggs, right, and all the different personality types, there's a punk rock for you on that whole spectrum. And we're not all one little thing, we branch out into the different thing. If it were a diagram, we would have stuff here.
Yeah.
We would have stuff here. And we just kind of work with whatever. And so I think it's just critical for individuals and growth to we're naturally going to find outside of what we think we know, and then we're going to naturally move outside that in a different way too.
Yeah, and also just through our growth, we also shift roles as well.
Oh, absolutely. The 16-year-old version of Seneca is not the same as the 22-year-old version. They don't get along at all. And he's not the same as the 30-year-old and the 35-year-old. Now I'm old man, where's my cane, Seneca? And he is way different. And he's learning to forgive all the other ones. And that's the weird part of my current journey, is trying to go, you know what? You were a kid who went through trauma. You got to love yourself because you were going to make mistakes. You were set up to make mistakes. And those mistakes are learning opportunities. That's how you got here, buddy. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, God, that was beautifully worded. Thank you. God, that was just very beautifully worded. Thank you. And along those, sort of piggybacking off of that, when I was in my early 20s, I was carpooling to work with one of my coworkers. And on our way home from work that day, she asked me what I'm sure for her was more of an innocent question, just like conversation starter. But like for me, it was like I felt it punch me in my soul. And she said, "Are you happy?" And I was like, I don't
Huh.
know. Like, I don't know how to answer that question. She looked at me, she said, just, are you happy? Are you happy right now? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what happiness is. I know I'm surviving.
Yeah.
I know
On
I'm
that pulse.
alive, but I don't know. I don't even know what at that point in my life, like I don't even know what happiness feels like. So just that one question started a multi-year journey. And within the first couple weeks, I realized like, no, I'm not happy. Like I'm angry, I'm pissed off, I'm
Yeah.
mad, like I'm hurt. Like my mom threw me away.
Yeah.
Like rejected.
Devalued.
Yeah. I was like, and I don't know how to deal with that.
I bet not. That's everything all at once, right?
Right. And so then realizing one, I'm not happy. It's like, okay, cool. Do I want to be happy? And then process like, yeah, like I think being happy would be a neat experiment. I
Yeah.
wonder what that journey is. Right. So then it's cool. Like, what is going to make me happy? And that's not saying there weren't like happy and joyful moments in my life up until that point. I was married at the time. I loved my wife. It was like, but, and being married to her was I mean, I'm still married to her. It is a happy thing, right? But as a person, internal level, I was not a happy person. And so trying to find this journey of, okay, how do I become a happy person? And it took years. And again, I was listening to bands that promoted, PMA, positive mental attitude. So listening to this stuff, and I was like, yeah, PMA. I was like, oh, wait, no, I do not have a positive mental attitude at all. I sing the songs. I can tell you the words. I can talk to you about, I can talk to you about Bad Brains and, Posi Core and all this stuff in the bands. But yeah, it's not in my soul. So how do I get it inside? And yeah, it was, I mean, multiple years. And, in hindsight, I probably should have gotten professional help with it, but I didn't. But yeah, it was a multi-year journey to become that happy person. And then it was like, cool, I'm happy. And then I have a day where I wasn't. I was like, I failed. I'm not happy.
Yeah, it's all over.
Right. But, and again, realizing it's a journey and all we can do is our best today.
Absolutely.
And then coming to the terms with, what, my best today may not be my best tomorrow.
That's the hard part for me.
Yeah. And finding the room, as you so beautifully said earlier, but finding the room to forgive ourselves when our best one day doesn't equal the best of the day before.
I think one of the greatest superpowers in the world is giving yourself grace. And it's for many of us, especially like you said, when we grow up with that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And so we're climbing up this ladder, right? And we slip a rung or two. And we're like, oh, I didn't have the proper parenting, so I need to be really self-fucking critical right now. You son of a bitch, you failed, you fucked it up, you blah, blah, blah. And, it's like, hey, the journey's up there. We can go back just a little bit. Just keep your eye on that North Star and keep going up and learning that grace.
Yeah.
That is a muscle that needs flexed for me every day, every hour, every moment, because it's not innate for me because I didn't have that tutelage. I didn't have a mentor who taught me that. And so it's like, how do I develop that muscle?
Yeah. Well,
powerful.
Yeah. And I worked with kids for a long time, kids with trauma, and they would get up, like they would, have relapses or slide backs or whatever. And I'm big into the outdoors. So, I would, when a kid was in the middle of a relapse, like just beat themselves up for a mistake they made, I said, hey, and I would always give them this analogy about Mount Everest and how you climb big mountains. I'd always say to them, like, hey, do you know how to get, when people go and climb Mount Everest, do you know how they get from base camp to the top? They're like, well, they go up the mountain. I said, yeah, they go up the mountain. But is it a straight journey or are there ups and downs? And I go, wait, they just go to the top. And I was like, no, like they go up and downs. There's multiple camps going up and it takes a month, 2 months, however long it takes. But you go from base camp to camp one, and then you come back down to base camp, camp one, and you do that trip multiple times. And then you go base camp to camp two, to camp one, to camp two, to base camp. It's this constant up and down till you finally reach the top. And you're doing that to learn what it takes to acclimate yourself, to gain this knowledge, to get to that next campus. And that's the journey. And one of my bosses out there pulled me aside one day and they said, when are you going to take your own advice? What are you talking about? Like you said, like giving yourself grace, like you preach this to the kids and it's great, but you do not do that for yourself. Like you do not give yourself grace. And until you do, like you're going to kill yourself if you don't start giving yourself some grace. And it is, like I said earlier, it's realizing that our best today is our best today. And we can't judge ourselves on our best today tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's all these other things in the world going on that we have no control over.
No control.
So our best tomorrow might be better than our best today, or our best tomorrow might not be as good as our best today. But I feel the important thing is doing your best.
Absolutely. Do your best with what you have, because it's not only external forces we can't control. There's myriad internal forces we don't even think about. Literally, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, maybe the nerve in your neck is jacked up. Perhaps your meds are incorrect and your mental chemistry is a little different than what you expected, or your food didn't work out certain way. There are always factors that you don't think about that you're not controlling, and that will influence the way your day goes. That, sorry, buddy, you missed the ball and you didn't hit it. Yeah, and that's okay, because tomorrow you got to stick to the process. And working with kids, I never worked with kids, but I listened to a person speak about this once, and it says, when you're trying to develop yourself, and we're all trying to develop ourselves, you need to be as kind to yourself as you would a child. Because right now it's your internal child, your inner child that's trying to learn a new skill of just surviving, just trying to make it through the fucking day in this world. And so treat that child the way you would treat an external child. Would you scold them? Would you harm them? Would you be cruel to them? No, of course you wouldn't. You would nurture them and you would want them to grow, and you would give them lessons to grow. So allow yourself that grace for your internal self. When I heard that, I was like, what does that mean? It was such a weird concept to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're growing, and we're all just growing on this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, like I set the bar for myself so high.
Absolutely.
Right. Because of those earlier traumas in my life. And it's like, I have to prove all these people wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I still struggle with that. But at one point in time, I'm like looking at my history and my life. I turned out okay. I turned out okay. Yeah. I survived.
You're here. You're here.
Yeah.
That's a fucking miracle.
Yeah. And there's something just in that. There's something to be proud of. But that old trauma has a nasty way to still like slither in when you least expect it.
Absolutely. It's a voice that for me, has never left.
Yeah.
And so I used to mask it by saying, well, fuck you, you don't exist. And that works to an extent. But now my current journey, I'm trying to face it and feel like, what do you need? And that's doing that inner work and saying, look, because that's what got you through. The trauma that got you through when you were 15 sleeping on a bench, that's a superpower, right? At that time.
Yeah.
But at this time, it's your worst fucking enemy.
Right.
So you have to say, look, you got me here. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I want to nurture you, but I cannot allow you to control my life. So you have to find that way. And that's where I'm at right now with my own internal survival trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And but it's tough because it's weird. It's weird how it rears its head, right? It's weird how it creeps in. So currently I make sorbet, and I don't just do like, here's strawberry sorbet or here's watermelon. Like, I make these flavors that you wouldn't typically find other places.
Yeah.
And I use like foraged ingredients, and I'll go to farms and get my produce directly from farms. And it's pretty good. But my problem is when I make just a banging flavor that's just like everything came together in this way, then like I set that bar for every other flavor.
Gotcha.
So recently I did a raspberry dandelion sorbet.
Okay.
And it's if the sun came down and kissed a raspberry and put it in your mouth, like
It's delightful.
it is really good. But that's my bar now.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You got that.
And so I've made these other flavors and like I just need to throw them away. Like they aren't as good as this. And so I took a bunch of flavors. I was at a market yesterday, so I took a bunch of flavors just so people could try it. So I could let my friends try it at the market I was at. And I preface it like, yeah, like I brought these flavors for you all to try. They aren't that good. And all of them are like, these are great. What are you talking about? They aren't that good. I was
Right?
like, yeah, but it's not this. And like, yeah, everyone's not going to be that. But like, just because it's not that doesn't mean it's trash. But again, just dealing with that stuff we've been talking about it's
funny you say. I think that is so. It's one of our greatest fears, right? Is that I'll never be able to top that last thing. As who plays music in bands, like I write a cool song or I have an accomplishment, I'll never be that. And it's like accepting that's okay. That's good. And I can do something good that may not be subjectively equivalent, but it's as good because I put my effort into it and I put my love into it and I put my energy into it. And accepting how it works. And then instead of making that a bar, going from that, what as they call it, the goal-oriented like objective, switching to that process objective. Like I just gotta keep showing up and keep making sorbet. And like I'm gonna have bangers. Of course I'm gonna have bangers. The universe will throw them at me and I'll do it. And if not, I've got this one that no one else has ever done.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Most days, like that's where I am. Most days it's like I know all of them.
On the good days.
Yeah. Like I know
right?
all of them aren't going to be like,
yeah.
Holy hell, what did I just put in my mouth? And I'm okay with that most days, but every now and then that earlier trauma just finds a crack and gets through it.
Yeah. It always exploits those tiny cracks. It's like a roof where the rain comes down and next thing you know, it just trickles in and it gets in that foundation and we don't even realize it's happening. And then we're like, oh, I'm back to this part of me that the perfectionist that says, I am not doing my best, but you are doing your best. And it's the illusion. It's the carrot on the stick that we're chasing.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. 100%. Same with music too. It's weird with me. I'm the vocalist in a band and I write some good songs. I write some not so good songs, whatever. But I don't play an instrument. So it's like, I just write some words and talk aggressively or whatever. But for me, like I don't have that same bar when I'm in a band. And I think it's because like I don't consider myself to be a musician. So even though like I've been in bands for 30 some odd years, like I don't feel pressure there because I've never really considered myself to be a musician.
When there's something tied to your livelihood and that goal, it becomes magnified. And so for me, I have a nasty hobby of day trading, right? This has this economic goal for me that can provide for my family, that can nurture my family. And so if I'm not doing my best and I'm never surpassing a certain bar, I'm laying down myself. I'm proving all my naysayers correct if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. My family, those who hated me, those who judged me, and my internal demons, that becomes so exploited that I feel no sense of worth. And I'm not sure that's you and your situation, but I become demasculated. I'm no longer the provider I wanted to be. It can be so subtle that, like you said, you make a good flavor, but it exploits those weird internal trauma and insecurities and those levels. And so sometimes it's like deep breath, just talking about, I feel anxiety, right? Like I literally feel, oh man, I'm messing it up for my wife. And that's tough. And I think a lot of people who are perfectionists and have that good sense of that, unfortunately, the other side of the coin, it's that when livelihood or something we personify or project toward livelihood comes to it, it becomes very difficult. We feel that pain and all the logic in the world doesn't stop it.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah. And I think, and it's that journey, right? It's that
Oh,
journey
yeah.
of, like we were saying earlier, just do your best today.
Yeah, show up, do your
Yeah.
best, stick to the process, and recognizing those triggers. That's the cool thing. You know this, your logic self does that. And then it's like working with your emotional self and go, look, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I gotta go punch the punching bag. It's okay though.
Mhm.
It's okay because I won't let that control me.
Yeah, it's a journey.
It is a journey. They go
Um,
for a reason, and you realize, wow, okay, there's a lot of stops along this
Right.
path.
Yeah, I was talking to my stepmom a couple weeks ago. Past came up and history came up, but she was saying, your dad and I just wish we would have known what was going on, because we lived entirely different parts of the country. They didn't know what was going on. There was very little communication. I didn't know they didn't know what was going on, so I was under the assumption that they knew what was going on. They
just
didn't.
ignored it.
You're right. But yeah, so anyway, I was talking to her, like she and my dad talk about frequently just how we really wish we would have known what was going on. We would have like taken you in and you could have come and lived with us and we could have given you this life. And I was like, I appreciate that now. Like, I truly appreciate that sentiment and I'm thankful for that sentiment. However, all of those struggles and the continued resultant struggles because of that sort of made me who I am. And I'm pretty okay with who I am now.
Yeah.
But like the younger me definitely appreciates that.
Exactly.
You know?
He's healed this young version of me, and this one's thankful to have gone through that, but he needed to hear that.
Yeah. And, it's that journey of dealing with the trauma and healing that trauma, or trying to heal the trauma little by little.
Yeah, piece by piece.
Yeah.
You know how to eat an elephant, right?
Well, so we've been talking about an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to start wrapping it up. So I have a couple questions left. The first question is, what gives you hope?
That's a great question. I do have hope. Some days it feels like I don't. I'm disenchanted, but I'm hopeful. And that's how I describe myself. What gives me hope is simple love and people. I'm, like most people, subjected to the barrage of media and social media and a skewed perception of humanity that is never favorable. It's never favorable. But when I interact with community, when I'm around humans and people, I find that it doesn't matter what their belief system is, doesn't matter. Most of them, we'll say bell curve, that the majority is 68 to 80%. They are just trying to survive and being decent and good people. I think as human beings, that's encoded in most of us. Sometimes we reject it and sometimes we fight it, as we may witness. But for the most part, we just want to eat, feed our families and survive and laugh and have a good time. And that gives me hope. Seeing real people in real community and talking to people, engaging with them, and then getting jazzed. And, oh, you want to make a change too? Let's do it. Let's start with ourselves.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. If you could go back and talk to 14, 15, 16-year-old you, what would you tell him?
It'd be all right. It's not your fault. Don't torture yourself over this, and it'll be okay. It just takes time. And I think it was easy for me to take the burden of the world. Mom's having a horrible time, so it must be my fault. She's drinking and throwing beer cans at me and ashtrays at my head, and I'm learning to dodge them.
Yeah.
I fucked up. It's not your fault, Sen. She's dealing with her trauma. And when trauma becomes a Venn diagram, the colors in the center become dark and toxic, unfortunately. And so it's all right. You'll get through it. You can get through it. It just takes time. And this is so important for me, is that, I wanted to give up so many times. And I tried to give up. But I realize now that I learned so much, and I feel like love becomes more and more authentic as I learn. And I don't know how to articulate that. It's just something that I've grown into, where the love I feel now towards the world When I was 16, I thought I loved my 16-year-old girlfriend. It wasn't love in the sense that where I just want to give to this world. I just want to be enveloped by it and reciprocate that sort of love. And it's just like a synergy that I think some people eventually grow to feel. And that's where I'm at now. And I wouldn't be able to tell my 16-year-old self that, but if I could pass that feeling and understanding, I would certainly love to.
Awesome. Thank you. What are you currently listening to?
Currently listening to, there's a band out of Denver called Blank Slate. There's an indie outfit, a two-piece. Every time I see them live, they sound like a five-piece. They blow my mind. Blank Slate out of Colorado. Anyone and everyone should look them up.
So this may be a redundant question. Who do you think people should be listening to?
Oh, yeah, it may be redundant because I'm always telling people Blank Slate. That's a great question. I don't even know. I'll stick with Blank Slate.
Okay, fair enough. Blank Slate. Last question, I think. If people want to find your music, where would they find it?
I play in a band called Angelus Errare, and the spelling of that is atrocious, but I'll spell it real quick. ANGELUSERRARE. Angelus Errare. We're a punk outfit out of Laramie, Wyoming. So if you type it close enough and say Laramie, Wyoming, that would be it. We're on Bandcamp and all the social stuff, and we're pretty good. We rock out about introspective stuff, dealing with life in general. Our singer lyricist Will Hebert is I love being in a band where I look at the person like, I would come to see your shows if I was in this band or not. You're amazing.
Awesome.
And all my band members are amazing. But yeah, Angelus Errare.
Cool. Thank you so much, my friend. I truly appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me.
I appreciate this, and I'm sorry if I go off on tangents because
no, and that's the wonderful thing about this being mine is like we can do whatever the hell we want to do. You know,
I take a lot of left turns sometimes,
and that's okay. I think all those turns took us to the places where we probably needed to be. So again, thank you, and I'll wrap this up. Again, social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on the others, but really Instagram's the only one I do anything with, and it's just at Punk Love Compassion, one word. Email me if you want to, punklovecompassion@yahoo.com. If you have a story you think people might want to hear, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. And with that, with hope, love, and compassion, we will talk to you next time.